Pat, is there anything in the papers regarding the protocols that are going to be put in place? Have they been sent any sort of document which gives them an idea? I know there's the captain's call this afternoon, but have they had any information?
Yeah, they were sent some guidelines yesterday, we understand. That's covered in the paper. And actually, let me bring this in now, because there's something by Jason Burt in the Telegraph. Like you said, key moment today in persuading the players and the managers to get on board with this, conference calls with players, with managers. And in Jason's piece in the Telegraph, he talks about players having to get used to a new normal. That's been apparently via this document explained to the players. And one part of this is telling players to turn their face away, not as they challenge, but as they get up from a challenge, and avoid face-to-face contact where possible. Now, Graeme, what do we think of that? Is it fair to ask a player to change, I suppose, what have become automatic behaviours like that? Is it realistic to ask players to change behaviours like that?
Pat, that's been written by someone who's never played the game and doesn't understand the game. What are they saying? You make your tackle and turn away. What if you make the tackle, you end up with the ball at your feet? I mean, that's the daftest thing I've heard so far about this, us getting back to playing football. Listen, when you're playing football, you get yourself at the highest level. Professional footballers get themselves to a place where they're only focused on the next 5 seconds in front of them, and then the next 10 seconds. And that's how you play 90 minutes. That's all you're interested in. That's where you're focused at, is at that split second. You haven't got time to think about anything else. You know, I'm just thinking that corner kicks, free kicks coming into the box. So they're going to sort of stay 2 metres apart, and they're not going to look at the man. You have to look at the man. You have to put yourself in a position where you can see some of your man and some of the kicker. And that ain't going to change. They're paid at that time as a defender to keep the ball at their net. That's their only focus. The striker will be ducking and diving at set pieces, bobbing in, trying to get on the blind side of people. They will not be thinking about anything other than what's in front of them at that time. And it would be jumping out at you watching a game of football if it was any different. I don't see, coming up with that tosh is even worth talking about, Pat. Sorry.
But I think, Patrick, I think it's what I would say on that. I read that story last night or this morning. If you were a player that was fearful of coming back, that would make you more fearful, if that is true. If it's something that actually, even a player who, to be fair, I think wants to come back would read that and think, oh, that makes me a little bit worried if they're telling me that I have to turn my face away in a tackle, because I won't do that. It's instinctive, as Graeme says, it's nonsense. So, coming back to the point I'm going to make, this is what happens when you have an information vacuum, and misinformation, lack of communication basically has occurred from day one here. And players are finding things out in the media, whether it be their 30% pay cut and deferrals a month or so ago, to having to turn their heads in tackles, which might be complete nonsense, as Graeme says, might not even be in the rule book. I suspect it's not in the rule book. But when you don't communicate properly and openly to players and the public, you end up with this sort of vacuum and this misinformation and the sort of speculation that's every single day. We're going to play games that are less than 45 minutes, Gordon Taylor said last week. Players are there sat there at home thinking, are we? And all this type of stuff that's come out in this last few weeks, they're not going to have an easy ride, I don't think, with the captains on the call today. I think some of the captains will give them a difficult time because the idea of ringing them up a month ago with regards to the pay cut, and then the next day, the next time they speak to them is today with regards to sort of, it's safe to play. There's got to be sort of a continual journey that you bring people on when you're looking at scenarios like this. It's a unique situation. The Premier League, the EFL, other organisations have been able to what would be act unilaterally in the way in which they do for many, many years. What this crisis called for was a different way of approaching things in a more collaborative manner and bringing people on the journey. And I think that some of the players today, not all of them, I agree with Graeme, the vast majority of football players will want to play, but the ones that don't want to play will need to take some major convincing.
In fairness, just to clarify one thing, I don't know if this will make any difference to what you two think. They're not talking about turning away in the challenge. It does specifically say in the piece that I've read in the Telegraph, you're turning away after you've made a challenge. And also, Gary, I mean, you're talking about a lack of information. Is it almost the other way here? They've given a lot of information. Players have been sent guidelines, and there's a conference call today. So certainly over the last couple of days, can we really lay that at that door that they haven't given enough information?
Patrick, I honestly believe, I'm imagining here that turning your head away after a tackle is actually nonsense, like Graeme said. If that's actually true, if I was a player being told that I have to turn my head away after a tackle, what do I do on a corner when, like Graeme says, you're facing somebody up really closely, you're in the face, you can smell the breath as bad as it seems. You can smell the other player's breath when they're actually close to you on a corner. If we're saying that is putting players at risk, they shouldn't be playing football. If that rule is true, they shouldn't be playing football. If they're saying that you must turn your head away after a tackle as a rule to a player, that would make me incredibly fearful. And I'm imagining it's not true. So we're speculating here again. In terms of too much information, Patrick, that is absolutely not the case here. There hasn't been a Premier, apart from Steve Parish and Paul Barber and maybe Martin at Southampton, I can't think of another Premier League owner or chairman that I've not even seen. They've been invisible through these last few weeks. The Premier League have been invisible through these last few weeks. The doctors and medical experts in football have been invisible in these last few weeks. There was a different way of doing this. And ultimately, we're left with players coming to their own conclusions. I accept that they'll be speaking to their own club doctors. But the reality of it is, we've heard League One and League Two players and managers speak openly in the last few weeks about the concerns, the fears, wanting to play, not wanting to play. I thought James Tarkowski spoke well. To be fair to him, he's one of the players that I think I've seen speak openly around wanting to return to football. But generally, I think in these last few weeks, Patrick, the newspapers and media every single day are coming up with different stories, different numbers. They don't all seem to fit together. And I think that at this moment in time, we do need to be communicated to properly as a country as to why it's safe to return to football, not just the players, because the fans want to hear it as well.
But what about the point as well, Graeme, that if players don't change behaviour, if there's not a new normal, whether it's in a tackle or whether it's you celebrate goals differently, you could be talking about a situation where football is either changed forever or doesn't exist as we know it now. The Premier League doesn't exist as we know it now.
Patrick, it's impossible to change behaviour on a pitch. It's impossible.
The only thing that could remotely change, the one thing you mentioned, Pat, would be a goal celebration. But, your first reaction is to hug your mate if he's just scored a goal and done something really clever that's put you in front. I mean, OK, there might be that first instinct to go and hug him and you pull back. But the rest of the game cannot change. It just cannot change. You're in the moment. Unless you've been there. Any will tell you, the guys that play on the parks on a Sunday will tell you, you're in the moment. You're only focused on what's in front of you and you deal with it. Because it's not like you have 2 or 3 seconds to think, I'm not going to get too close to him and mark him because the rules say I shouldn't. The game is not like that. And I come back to anyone who's suggesting these things, they just don't know how the game works. If they think they can dictate, you tackle and you look away instantly. No, I'm not sure who came up with that, but they don't know the game.
Well, Graeme,
okay, well, the other issue
sorry, Patrick. Graeme, would you accept, though, that if that rule was something that they were asking players to adhere to, that it would make a little bit of a nonsense of the return? Because you're asking players to do those things to remain safe. It doesn't feel like it's safe in the first place.
No, but it's not a rule, is it? It's a suggestion, a recommendation. But I keep coming back to it. If you're a player, you're only interested in what's immediately in front of you, and you've been programmed to react to things since you were 15 years old and you joined a professional club. So you're now 26, 27, being asked to do something completely different, which is imprinted into your memory. This happens, I do that. You don't even think about these things when you're confronted with them. It's an instant, it's a normal reaction because you've been programmed to think like that and work like that all your professional life.